Dr. Jose Chua was not the type to automatically conclude that a sudden shift in his normal everyday life involves the supernatural. Thousands of miles away from his native land, he left most superstitious beliefs his family and culture believe in. However, what went through his wife one eventful night is impossible to understand and comprehend, much more to explain to others. He thought that it was a regular case of sleep talking, which can happen due to stress and overthinking. After all, he was a doctor trained to find logical explanations for everything. But when it happened again, looking at his wife, or at whoever is using his wife's body to communicate, he was compelled to reach out to the police. Dr. Chua was talking to Teresita Basa, and she made it very clear that her spirit would not be laid to rest until the person responsible for her brutal murder is put to justice. Hey, my name is Detective Maple. If you like true crime stories and unsolved mysteries, hit that subscribe button because I'm here to bring tons your way. So drape your blanket over your head and let's get spookin'. When Teresita flew from the Philippines to the United States in 1960 to study music, she had a whole life ahead of her. Teresita was part of the Philippine aristocracy. She had some jump start, yet she never stopped trying to achieve things independently. In the late 70s, Teresita was teaching piano and pursuing a doctorate in music, which made her job as a respiratory therapist seem like a side hustle. You probably think that's amazing. How can someone have two jobs and pursue a doctorate degree at the same time? She was definitely a girl boss. And as if that's not enough, she was also writing a book. To all her colleagues, she was cheerful, but also quiet and unassuming. She does her best to make everyone feel at home, even keeping cans of beers and bottles of alcoholic drinks just in case a friend needs to let out some emotions. She was the poster woman for someone everyone could not help but love. No one could even imagine how and why anyone would want to hurt Teresita, much less end her life mercilessly. But in hindsight, we know where the story is going. And I'm warning you, it would only get more and more disturbing from here. On September 21, 1977, a janitor of an apartment building on Chicago's North Side called in a fire on the 15th floor. When the firefighters arrived on the floor where the janitor says the fire was reported, the entire hallway was clouded with thick smoke, and it was no question that it was coming from apartment B. The door was locked and no one was answering when they called out. Luckily, the janitor had the key and they went inside with the intent to put out the fire first. Inside, they found out that the source of the fire was a burning mattress. Under it, they found some clothes and the burned, naked body of a woman, eyes pointing at the ceiling, legs spread apart, face unrecognizable, and a butcher's knife stuck to her chest. This immediately became a crime scene, so homicide detectives led by Detective Joe Stashula were called in. The body and the apartment were easily traced back to then 48-year-old Teresita Basa. From the positioning and condition of her body, the initial assumption of the police was that the crime was sexually motivated. However, when the autopsy results came back, they told them that there was no physical evidence of that theory. Searching for clues, the police did not suspect anything missing in the apartment, leading them to believe that the robbery was also not the motive of the killer. The investigators believed that the murderer staged the crime scene to mislead the police from catching the culprit. They attempted to burn her body to get rid of their tracks. Although they failed to completely destroy the body, the police were also left with no physical evidence or any lead as a lot were destroyed in the fire. One interesting thing that miraculously was spared from the fire was a memo in her planner that says, "Get concert tickets for AS." Other than that, Nothing seems to be out of the ordinary. In cases like these, it was common to suspect the significant other. Her boyfriend was a suspect in her murder, although he was eventually cleared out. Desperate for answers, the police started tracing Teresita's moves before her murder. There were records of her being on the phone with a coworker about the concert tickets they were selling. During the call, she would excuse herself because someone was at the door who, according to Teresita, was there to buy tickets. After that, she was on another call with a friend named Ruth, who mentioned that at the time, Teresita had a visitor in the apartment. After dozens of interviews, no one came forward to testify to having seen someone enter and left the apartment. The case was going cold until months later, without any development, Detective Stashula was introduced to another cop from Chicago. The cop says that a man went to him and said that they have information about Teresita's murder. The police officer was very vague with his explanation of what happened and told the detectives that they should just meet this couple in person. 5 months after the murder, the police were led to the home of the Chuas, who claimed to have information that might help the case. They seemed adamant, even embarrassed, when they started talking to the police. Dr. Jose Chua, the husband, knew well that their story would sound absurd. He said that one night, his wife Remy Chua woke up from a nap. Something about her seemed off and incoherent. When he asked her what was wrong, she spoke in Tagalog, the language of the Philippines, which was surprising because she usually spoke in English. What was even weirder was that she spoke with a Spanish accent, something that his wife did not have. The voice claimed that she was a murder victim named Teresita Basa, and she begged Dr. Jose to help her. Probably thinking that Remy's dream continued beyond her nap, Dr. Jose tried to shrug it off. Besides, when she woke up, Remy had no memory of what had just happened. But then it happened again 2 days later. Again, Teresita urged Jose to go to the police and tell them what happened to her. Jose told the spirit possessing her wife that he could not do that without evidence. This time, she named her killer, Alan Showery, a friend of hers whom she let inside the house herself. As proof, he claimed that according to the voice, a jade pendant and a pearl cocktail ring were stolen and given to Alan's girlfriend as a gift. The spirit also named her cousins, who she said could identify the jewelry, Ron Samara and Ken Basa. She even provided a phone number. She said that Alan was supposed to fix her TV that day. Instead, he killed and burned her. As you can imagine, the police were starting to raise their eyebrows as Dr. Jose was narrating. But they were out of leads, and the details the Chuas provided were too specific, too temptatious not to somehow consider and look into. Despite the peculiar nature of how they obtained the new details about the case, the detectives checked up on Alan Showery and listened to what he had to say. What could go wrong? If he was indeed responsible, then the case would be solved. If he is hiding potentially helpful information, then they would get it. If he is innocent, then they could clear him off the list and Alan could go on his merry way. Alan Showery was living with his girlfriend only 4 blocks away from Teresita's apartment. They would later find out that he had charges of theft, burglary, and 2 counts of sexual assault against him, but those were dropped. When the police questioned him, he told the police he knew Teresita and that he indeed was supposed to be there to fix Teresita's TV. Although for some reason, he enjoyed playing darts and drinking with his girlfriend at a neighbor's place a little too much, lost track of time, and forgot about the commitment. He also said that he has never been to her house before. The police were like, "Okay, great, but can we have some fingerprints just to be sure?" And as they were about to, he decided to tweak something in his story. Take 2, action. This time, Alan says he has in fact been to her house many months ago, which is an odd thing to lie about. Was he worried that he had fingerprints left there? Side note, the police weren't really going to collect any fingerprints because the blaze has destroyed lots of physical evidence. They only asked him for one to see his reaction, and they were right to do so. When he realized that the police were not buying it, Alan's third version of the story is that he actually had been in Teresita's house that night to repair her television. But, so conveniently, he left some tools he needed, so he went back home instead. Alan, at this point, was really suspicious in the eyes of the police. However, they needed something more than his own words to build a case, and that's when they interviewed his girlfriend Yanka. When the detectives asked if he had given her any jewelry lately, she said that he had given her jewelry in February as a late Christmas gift. And what do you know? She received Teresita's missing jewelry as confirmed by her relatives. When confronted with these findings, Alan Showery asked to talk to 8 months pregnant Yanka and confessed to the murder. Showery said that on his way back home, the thought of his unpaid bills and his growing family just dawned over him, so he decided to rob Teresita. She had been generous to him before, and that gave him the assumption that she had money. When he came to the apartment, Teresita opened the door for him, locked it back, and then he wrapped his arm around her neck until she passed out. Alan then staged the crime scene, stabbed Teresita in the chest, took her mattress, and burned it over her. He signed this in his written confession. Is this supernatural or work drama? One of the greatest mysteries of this case was how Remy Chua knew all the details about Teresita's murder if she was not possessed. Remy and Teresita had actually worked at the Edgewater Hospital in Chicago. They met at orientation, but they worked different shifts. This could explain how she might have known about the murder, and it is speculated that she had gathered all this information from colleagues over the months. Another question was why she would implicate Alan and point him out as the culprit. According to Showery's attorneys, Alan had also worked at the same hospital. They worked together for a time until Alan complained about Remy's absenteeism and work quality, which led to her being fired. This would be a good reason as to why Remy implicated Alan. Still, if she had known something, why hasn't she just gone to the police herself? Why would she and her husband do all this work of pretending to be the victim's spirit? Alan Showery would later take back his confession and plead not guilty. Because of this and the reasonable doubts of the jury, he was given another trial, to which he finally pleaded guilty on February 23, 1979. He was sentenced to 14 years in prison for the murder and 4 years each for arson and armed robbery. He would be eligible for parole after serving half of his sentence. All of these he did for a couple of pieces of jewelry and $30 from Teresita Basa's apartment. Teresita Basa was laid to rest in Negros Island, Dumaguete in the Philippines. There's never an acceptable reason why someone would kill another person, especially the horrific way Teresita's life ended, but that's what happened, and it was such a senseless crime. As for how her spirit solved her own murder, or how much the Chuas knew about her life and beyond her death, we could only speculate. Do you think Remy was a concerned colleague who got so invested in the case that she embodied the consciousness of the victim? Or is it Teresita's spirit, for the last time, who prompted justice for herself? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. In the next story, Clairvius Narcisse was pronounced dead only 3 days after being admitted to the hospital. Years later, her sister was not expecting to be approached by a walking dead man claiming to be her dead brother Clairvius, who had a whole epic story to tell. Until then, Puppet out!